Hello, welcome back to Expressive Arts. Let me share my screen with you. Okay, you should be seeing that in full view now. This is our final chapter lecture for this class, so that's pretty exciting. We are covering chapter 10, Integrating the Arts. So really this is a kind of a summary or a culmination of all of the stuff that we've discussed in the class this term. If you have any questions on any of the material that we're covering this time or that we've covered before, be sure that you ask those, okay? All right, let's go ahead and get started. Some key terms to consider: little intervention orientation, product-oriented orientation, guided exploration orientation, artist in residence, and remember we talked quite a bit about the Reggio Emilia type of program, and this could be related to that, okay? Value refers to the lightest or darkest of a color. Value becomes critical in a work which has no colors other than black, white, and a grayscale. For example, value in action, think of a black and white photograph, okay? And then scale, you have a little image there that kind of tells you all you need to know about scale just in that one little photograph. You see the image of the Eiffel Tower in the background, but when you put that person's hand up there, it kind of looks like they're holding a little tiny copy of it in their fingers there. So that's what when we talk about scale, that's what we're talking about, okay? This is taken from your book. It's on page 309 in your textbook. It's a long-term project on frogs. For some reason, children tend to be obsessed with frogs and their life cycle, and so it's a good study for them to work on. You can have examples of eggs and tadpoles and then the frogs in your classroom. Remember, these are amphibians, and so they carry salmonella and other diseases. So children should not be handling these as far as like safety-wise, right? They should be kept in a like an aquarium that the children aren't able to get into, okay? But that they can watch them in their habitat grow and develop, okay? This is just a kind of an excellent life cycle chart, which you can do with really any kind of an animal. Birds work really well, butterflies, other types of insects, okay? All right, the child's right to the expressive arts. This comes from the Association for Childhood International. They have the right to opportunities. They have a right to education for the future, art education, but education in everything. So really teaching to the whole child. Equity and intercultural understanding. Children's creative productivity is different than adults. They are not and should not be about the end product. It's all about the process, the learning process, okay? Creative expression should permeate the entire curriculum across the board, in every center, in every subject. Imagination is the key to artistry in teaching and excellence in schools. Talking about imagination of the children, but also of the adults working with the children, and our own creativity and our ability to inspire creativity in the young children. Schools must be refashioned for creative expression. And then there's a little bit more information on this on page 310 in your textbook. Okay, I'd spend some time looking at that. All right, orientation to the arts. You have the little intervention product-oriented, and guided exploration. So little intervention is when you just set the stuff out and they go for it, do what they want, right? Product-oriented is when you have an end product in mind and you help them work towards that end product. Keep in mind, developmentally appropriate practices and the age groups that should not be aiming for a particular product, but the process of learning how to, developing those skills to be able to create something. And then we have the guided exploration orientation, which is, children, there are ample materials set out in the classroom. Children have many, many opportunities, and adults may help and or guide a little bit, especially with learning new skills, scissor cutting skills. There's a safety issue there. Possibly holding pencils in the correct way, things like that. Okay. Right. We always want to keep developmentally appropriate practices in mind when we're working with children. It should be about the process, developing those skills, those fine motor skills, the different types of skills to do different types of arts, rather than that end product. Okay. If you get nothing more out of this class than process over product, then I feel like I've done a good job. It's about them learning new skills more so than creating this perfect piece of artwork that is the same as everyone else's. Okay. Integrated curriculum. Emergent curriculum and project approach. The belief that children's interests and questions should be the foundation of learning. The project is based on that and grows from the children's investigations. So say we were to do a project on frogs. Everything is going to be related to frogs because that's something that we know the children are interested in. If we have a group of children who aren't interested in frogs, then we probably shouldn't choose that subject, right? We should choose something that they're interested in. That doesn't mean that we aren't teaching them or working on standards and meeting goals. We're doing that within the project, okay? So we're using that project to help meet those goals and to help make sure that we're working on standards, okay? And then teaching with the arts, teaching about the arts, teaching through the arts. Each of those have a tiny bit of difference there. And your textbook goes into that. If you have questions on those, make sure you ask. Okay. Classroom teachers collaborate with experts. The Artist in Residence program, there's the Atelier and the Atelierista in the Reggio Emilia program. That just is like the art center, art room, and then the person who is the artist, right? It can be like a painter or a dancer or dramatic actor. It just depends on what you have going on. How will you collaborate with experts in your own classroom? So we don't see a lot of Reggio Emilia programs locally, but we do have local artists. We do have people in the community that you could invite in. Maybe they, we don't have the funds to keep them in the center for long periods of time, but we can invite them to volunteer to come in once, or maybe once a month, or depending on their schedules, what they can do. Think about that. Think about if you're already working in the field and you have your own classroom, what can you do to incorporate some community artists into your classroom? What kinds of things would you talk to them about or ask them to include with their demonstrations or their activities that they plan on doing with the children. You want to make sure that, you know, whatever they're going to do, that you have an idea beforehand and that you know that it's going to be something that's developmentally appropriate for the group of children that you're working with. Okay. All right, creating a classroom for the expressive arts. Look at the physical environment. Is it set up appropriately? Is it conducive to creativity and letting children explore their own interests? Look at the centers, the themes, the projects, the stories that are used. Integrating the arts into a study of spring could be very interesting, right? The expressive arts in a study of life in the sea. So you also need to consider, you know, the location of your school or your classroom. We here in the Panhandle of Nebraska are pretty much landlocked, right? We don't have an ocean near us. A study of ocean life doesn't really have a lot of meaning for young children, okay? A study of river life could be a different thing though. Freshwater. We have lakes and rivers and streams around us, so that might be, you know, a little more reasonable. A study of the sandhills, things like that that have meaning for children living in this area. Okay, and then think about the creative projects that you've seen. Were they creative? Were they based on the children's interests? Things like that. Okay, so we've covered a lot of material in this class. You have access to lots of ideas now, different ways to look at some of the information, recipes to use in the classroom, different activities that you can use. If you have any questions at all about the material we've covered, about the terms we've discussed, about developmentally appropriate practices, or about creativity in the classroom, make sure that you ask those questions, okay? All right, so this is our final lecture, our final chapter lecture for this class. I will record a final exam review lecture, so be on the lookout for that. And if you just, you know, make sure that if you have questions, you ask those, okay? All right, have a great week.